everyone, this is Kyle Bohannon here with another episode of the Art of Physical Fitness show. Today we have Kurtis Frank of Examine.com. Kurtis, introduce yourself to the folks out there and why they should care about what Kurtis Frank has to say.
Okay, so I'm Kurtis Frank, lead researcher and editor of Examine.com at the moment. Trained dietitian for university, although I don't have the designation at this moment in time. All I really do right now is research nutritional supplements and how to best use them, if you should use them, and for the most part, from an unbiased perspective. I love burning sacred cows. They taste delicious.
What inspired you to start up Examine as well as your other blog site, Silver Hydra?
Silver Hydra as the blog was just created as a way, someplace to put my thoughts.
Okay.
Examine was created because I wanted a place to collaborate all my research. So if I read a really interesting study, I can put it in a sort of database, come back to it within a year, and be able to locate it easily. And at the same time, I wanted everyone to be able to access that information as well.
Okay.
Then I just learned that a lot of people also want to just research all these supplements. So Examine just expanded. It started off as a sort of research for myself included. Then when everyone else wanted in on the research, I just expanded to teach people about supplements as well.
Okay. Now, is this personally? Is this all you work with Examine and Silver Hydra? Or do you do anything else outside of working with these sites?
For the most part, it's just those two.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get right back. Let's get right into it. Some of the questions I addressed via Facebook, wanted to get a feeler for some of the things your fans and my fans wanted to hear specifically. So we'll get right into the. There's three questions mainly that I wanted to that look like people had, and so we'll go with the first one. This one was from Jim, and Jim asked, "I'm curious what to take before sports competitions. Lots of info on post workouts, but not as much on actual sports. Beta alanine and caffeine are my current go-to, and sometimes a random energy drink. What's good and what is junk?"
The ones that I would consider good, it depends on, first of all, the sport you're doing. Beta alanine as well as sodium bicarbonate, that's just baking soda.
Mm-hmm.
They're both good for stuff like rowing or any anaerobic cardio. Like they're not magical by any means, but they do repeatedly show performance enhancement. I think recent meta-analyses on beta alanine concluded the benefit was like 2.5%. Like it was definitely there, but that's quite a small benefit. Sodium bicarbonate is just a bit better. For, I guess, powerlifting, weightlifting, creatine is definitely up there. It's not too much time dependent though. Some people do like take it before a workout. For the most part, sugars would be a really good thing to do. Like I do recall some studies saying that there's placebo, creatine, and just a sugar control, and sugar and creatine are equally effective. Now, they're both way better than placebo, and it's kind of cool because creatine doesn't have much calories, so increasing performance like that is nice. But at the same time, just basic sugar is also doing good performance enhancement there.
Now, explain the reasoning behind baking soda, sodium bicarbonate.
It's same thing as beta alanine. It's a lactic acid buffer. I haven't researched it too much to come to any major conclusions, but it's the same mechanism of action. They're both lactic acid buffers.
Perfect. Awesome. Oh, moving right along.
Oh, and also, stimulants. If your league allows stimulants and you tolerate them well, they're perfect.
What stimulants are you a fan of, if you will?
My favorite is ephedrine, but that is banned by a lot of leagues, so I cannot outright recommend that. Yohimbine is a good one, although it's not completely safe. Like no potent stimulant will be, but Yohimbine, if you don't have any anxiety issues and you don't overdose, it is effective. I'm not too much of a fan of caffeine because it's a stimulant for about a week, and then it just becomes anti-sleep. It loses the stimulant effects very quickly. The other two, Yohimbine and ephedrine, are stimulant for the most part for a month or so, then you just go off for a bit.
Okay, so basically, caffeine, you develop an immunity to it, for lack of a better term, to it pretty quickly, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like caffeine is, if you're not used to it at all, it's both a stimulant and anti-sleep. Quite amazing compound there. But you don't get used to the anti-sleep aspect, but you get used to the stimulant aspect within a week. So it just becomes an anti-sleep compound after that.
Now, a combo I use it very rarely, just maybe once every couple of months, and I really feel it before a workout, is caffeine and L-tyrosine mixed together. About 500 milligrams, 200 milligrams of caffeine and 3 grams of L-tyrosine. And I felt it gives me a good burst of those training sessions and I don't feel like much of a drop off or a sleep effect. Do you have any experience with that type of a combination or anything like that?
I actually like L-tyrosine. Like I do like it as a pre-workout or whatever, but not so much for the stimulant effects. Whenever I recommend L-tyrosine, some people report stimulation, a lot of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
It seems unreliable by itself for the stimulant aspect. Although a lot of people do report like a performance-enhancing aspect. As honest as sound, L-tyrosine may be sort of anti-stress in a way.
Okay.
So under like acute stressors like weightlifting, that might be beneficial.
Okay. Let's move right on to the next question, which was from Navid. And Navid asked, what do you think of casein in relation to risk of cancer as a supplement? Should it be avoided?
I would not avoid casein protein for that reason. I think most of the unless I'm horribly mistaken here, which I doubt I am, most of the casein cancer link comes from the book The China Study, where they did establish a sort of strained relation of casein to cancer.
Right.
What happened was, do you know of the toxin called aflatoxin?
I do not know.
It naturally occurs when peanuts and peanut butter products go bad.
Okay.
And it is a really potent liver toxin. And if it's in the liver, it damages the liver, causes carcinoma there, and then could kill you. It's actually a pretty big problem in the third world where food products go bad. Mm-hmm. Almost never a concern in the first world unless your peanut butter is green and you decide it's a good idea to eat it anyways. But in regards to that, it was found, like, this is a true statement, but in a protein sufficient diet or excess protein diet, your liver is better able to metabolize things through an enzyme system called P450. There's just more of the enzymes. Enzymes are made of protein, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
In a protein deficient diet, you have less of these enzymes. It just so happens that aflatoxin has to be metabolized by these enzymes to become a carcinogen. So the less enzymes you have, the less aflatoxin per se can give you cancer. And the more protein you have in your diet, the more likely aflatoxin can give you cancer. The problems with saying casein links to cancer is aflatoxin is not a concern for most people. The fact that aflatoxin is actually activated by these enzymes is like opposite of most carcinogens. Most carcinogens are actually inactivated by these enzymes. Aflatoxin is just weird. Mm-hmm. And I guess actually those are just the main two. And also, like, casein is not, it was used in the study, and apparently soy protein doesn't do this, but other animal sources like eggs, sardines, whey, they were not tested either. Okay. So it's weird to just link all this back to casein. But of course, the book was unnecessarily popular, and I guess that idea of casein causing cancer just stuck. Like, a more accurate conclusion is it augments protein deficiency protects you from aflatoxin. That is the conclusion we can make.
Yeah.
And then I guess if you go, like, rather than A to B, you go from A to L and just skip all these things of logic. Right. Then I guess you could say casein causes cancer. It's really inaccurate.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry at all about casein and cancer.
All right. But I want to kind of do a sidebar before we're on to the third question. As far as protein is concerned, you're talking about, obviously, you're the protein deficient, but what if is there too much abundance of protein that you can intake?
Or in regards to cancer or anything?
Just anything.
In regards to the whole, I'm just going to get this out of the way, the whole protein and kidney issue. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing some studies where you can measure some things in the blood that are thought to be indicative of, I guess, renal damage. And these things are spiked up if you go from, like, a really low protein diet, like 0.6 grams per kilogram, and then suddenly start consuming 2 grams per kilogram. So if you just automatically throw in a bunch of protein in your face, right, you may have a little bit of renal damage. I can't say how practically relevant this is because the studies lasted like 2 weeks. I do know that if you chronically consume a lot of protein, the kidneys just adapt. So you don't have any long-term damage. and I have not seen any indication of slowly titrating up the protein. That seems to be free of damage as well.
Okay, outstanding. All right.
So
No, go ahead.
maybe, like technically, protein could harm the kidneys. For the most part, it's not a concern either. Some people say that protein harms the liver. I don't know where this came from. And I don't actually think protein has been linked to adverse effects aside from lethal farts.
Okay, very good. Third question. Hans, I believe, asked this question. And is there some way to counteract naturally occurring acne besides proper hygiene?
A lot of acne is tied into androgen metabolism as well as inflammation. So any attempt to lower the activity of androgens may or may not be a good idea depending on your goals, or inflammation should help acne a bit. Like if you go on a huge egg, meat, no vegetable eating diet, your acne is probably going to get worse. A lot of people know this with whey protein as well. I'm not exactly sure why dairy causes acne. There's a weak link to it, but the link is present.
Okay.
And then like that'll cause acne to come up. And then I guess a lot of vegetables, fruits, just the anti-inflammatories in general can also reduce acne. Like topical interventions are going to be a lot more effective. There's actually a lot of topical anti-inflammatories. It's like any anti-inflammatory will work, it just needs to pierce the skin. I can't really name any offhand. And the ones I would name, I'm not sure if they're the best options either. I can easily look into that later.
Right.
But there are definitely a lot of herbal supplements and such, things that you can sell as a supplement, I guess, usually herbs, that help with acne, either orally or on the skin.
So in that same essence, what do you make of the synthetically made like Accutane, that type of a supplement? Besides
Retinol,
medication?
like, yeah, the bioactive form of vitamin A, retinol, it works like via the genome. It's really potent at stopping acne. It's just, it doesn't do just that. It does a lot of things, which is why there's all the side effects associated with Accutane.
Right.
It is effective. I would not necessarily recommend it, but I'm not going to advise against it either.
Okay.
Like, I do know that acne does reduce quality of life a lot, and some people are willing to accept the side effects of Accutane. I haven't come across anything better than Accutane. I haven't looked intensely, but that's a hard compound to beat in potency.
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I had Accutane. I didn't have any side effects from it, and it helped out a lot. So I'm right there with you. But yeah, I had to do all the blood tests bi-weekly, I think, maybe monthly, but yeah, all that. So those are the questions that were addressed by the fans. So let's get into the stuff that I had. I wanted to talk about. Let's first get into the big elephant in the room, creatine. There's all these different forms out there. A lot of it's probably marketing, I would assume, in your opinion. So what is the basis? Like, obviously, it's been proven in studies to be effective. And do you recommend any other variations outside of monohydrate?
Most of my opinions are basically, I use monohydrate as the default option, and I always recommend monohydrate. I would recommend stuff like micronized creatine or creatine citrate or creatine malate, just because they're more water soluble. Creatine nitrate is actually highly water soluble as well. So if you drink the creatines, those ones may be a bit better because they're not going to clump up. After consumption, they're all the same thing.
Okay.
Like they just degraded to creatine and it does the exact same thing in your body, but it may just be more pleasant to consume. And some people with sensitive stomachs may not want creatine monohydrate that's non-micronized to be in their stomachs. They may vomit.
Okay.
But performance-wise, there is no benefit to them, really.
So what do you make of all the stuff where they tie a glycogen molecule or glucose molecule to the creatine type of stuff that's out there? What do you make of that type of stuff?
In order for creatine to be absorbed, it, for the most part, has to be creatine itself. Anything attached to it is going to just be taken apart in the intestines.
Okay.
Like especially creatine hydrochloride, which is, I believe, the brand name Concrete. It just degrades into creatine in the stomach.
All right, moving on. Moving quick, man. Getting awesome answers. Protein, soy, whey, isolate, concentrate, all the different types of protein supplements you can take. What are your take? Obviously, if someone's lactose intolerant, there's some things there, or if they're a vegetarian or vegan, there's things there. But trying to sum up that broad question of protein?
I do recommend food sources over supplementation, although some supplements are cool. I like casein protein because it forms gels. You can make awesome food products and like puddings out of that. So if anyone is like, especially for New Year's, you want to get someone into fitness, get some chocolate casein protein, add a little bit of milk or whatever, make them a pudding.
Right.
That person will love like nutrition value 2 chicken breasts in your chocolate pudding. It's awesome. I don't like egg because I've never tasted a good egg product. Eggs just inherently taste bad in chocolate form. And I can't really recommend any sort of supplement powder, although I do want to sort of defend soy protein. A lot of people hate the soy isoflavones, the estrogen-y things. And aside from the fact that they're not even in soy concentrate, they're removed from the product completely. So it's something you don't need to concern yourself with them if you're using soy concentrate. And even if you are, they're not a bad thing either. Like, I guess soy's just got a really bad stigma with it, especially for guys. You don't need to worry about that stuff.
Right.
Like, people would be surprised at how common phytoestrogens are and how benign they are. Like, Panax ginseng has some really potent phytoestrogens in it, and I don't see anyone running away from their ginseng supplements. But yeah, so I just defend soy, and whatever tastes the best is the protein you should use.
Now, with soy being the topic, going off of that, is it? I mean, I've heard things where it's not very. It's just in a food form where you're getting soy through the food. Is it a very very well processed protein, digested protein, or is a meat source of a protein better than a soy?
Meat protein is better absorbed than soy. Soy is absorbed if it's cooked or fermented. Raw soy does have protein digestive enzyme inhibitors, so I would never recommend raw soy products.
Okay.
But all soy supplements, the powders, will be heat treated to remove this lectin.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So next thing, staple supplements. What do you feel like the bar none things people should have, or if they should really need anything at all outside of food?
A thing I usually say is if you've never taken creatine before, take it like do a loading period, I guess. So 20 grams a day in like 4 doses of 5 grams for a week. If you gain water weight, that means you respond to creatine. Congratulations, take 5 grams a day for the rest of your life. It's just creatine is too good to ignore, but there are some people who don't respond to it, so I can't recommend it for them. Beyond that, like the only things I would recommend are the vitamins and minerals that one is actually deficient in, which for the most part is magnesium or vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a high active athlete, zinc might also be in there. And if you have some weird diets, you should just be on the lookout for other stuff like vitamin B12 if you're a vegan. Those do take priority. Then creatine's in second place. It's not a vitamin, but especially if you're vegetarian, vegan, take it all the time. Then there's a bunch of compounds that aren't vitamins. They follow the same sort of motifs as vitamins. There is a serum level of it, whether you supplement it or not. It can fluctuate up and down a bit, and when it's down for too long, you're in sort of a deficiency state of sorts. Not enough to give you a disease state, hence why it's not a vitamin. But this kind of stuff, carnitine does apply to this, but you should only really supplement carnitine as a vitamin if you're a vegetarian, vegan, or like over the age of 70. In those scenarios, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If your diet is deficient in choline, this is vegetarians and vegans again, supplementation with that is definitely recommended. Coenzyme Q10, I'm not sure who I would recommend this to. Definitely people taking statin drugs. But I haven't researched it enough to like recommend or not. It's a relative to like vitamin D and creatine, it's kind of expensive. Right. So I don't want to just say everyone to take it. Same like there's also a compound called S-adenosylmethionine. It technically follows these motifs of a vitamin, and it's very good for joint health and antidepressant, but it's horribly expensive. I'm not sure if I can recommend it because of that price. Like it's definitely healthy, would benefit you regardless of what you do, but just the price is such a limiting factor on that guy.
Right.
And then like one thing that I'm not going to outright recommend this last one, but people would probably be interested in it. It's called PQQ is the acronym, because PQQ is a lot easier to remember than pyrroloquinoline quinone.
Right.
Nice tongue twister.
Right.
The best way to describe it, the best way to describe this is like it is basically coenzyme Q10, but in the cytoplasm of a cell rather than mitochondria. All it really does is help channel electrons through across proteins, and it does have a sort of deficiency state associated with it. If you take it all out of the rat's diet, then they'll have reduced growth, reduced mitochondria, less, I guess, vitality throughout life. There is insufficient evidence to recommend this for supplementation to humans at this point in time, but it's definitely a promising supplement that does follow these vitamin-like motifs. So it's definitely something to look out for.
What do you make of, very quickly, glutamine?
It's a gut health supplement. And if you burn half your body, it would be a good thing too.
Okay. Okay.
Like, technically, it's very integral in protein synthesis if you look at an isolated muscle cell. It's just orally ingesting it doesn't benefit your muscle cells too much because your intestines love it that much. They just sequester all the glutamine, and you just can't benefit muscle growth. Like, theoretically, if you can somehow bypass all your intestinal tract, like inject glutamine or something, it should be an amazing growth supplement. I've just seen no intervention that has done this with glutamine, though.
Huh.
It's kind of like creatine, where people just throw on weird conjugates and try to market that, but none of these conjugates have shown to help.
Yeah. Okay.
So at this point in time, I would not recommend it for muscle growth, but if you want to take it, go right ahead. It's great for your gut health. You can just use whey protein, casein protein. Those are awesome too.
Okay. Awesome. Next question. Green tea, is it an effective stimulant or metabolic booster, or is it just a good tasting drink?
I don't even like the taste too much.
No? I love it.
Like, it tastes like sweet grass, and that's better than grass, I do have to admit. But I've had other teas, like southern ginseng, gynostemma, very sweet. I like that guy. Anyways, it's weird because its mechanism of action is by inhibiting an enzyme which is known to have genetic variants. And if someone were to claim that green tea only burns fat in Asian populations, there is a bit of evidence to support that claim. But even then, the green tea burning fat mechanism is not too great, maybe dependent on you not being tolerant to caffeine. Like, there have been a few studies where there's been no significant effect of green tea overall, but if you stratify the groups into caffeine consumers and non-caffeine consumers, then the people who did not consume caffeine actually did burn fat. And people who consumed caffeine had nothing. So it's possible that green tea is just augmenting the efficacy of caffeine in this sense, and you only have the benefits of caffeine for, like, as long as it's a stimulant. But, like, I would not recommend green tea as a fat burner. It's definitely healthy. It's either going to have no effect or you can lose a little bit of weight.
Okay.
But I do believe its hype for being a fat burner and all that is too much.
Okay. Very good. Answers that question I had. Next up, ways to decrease appetite for overeaters, and then on the other side of the coin, ways to increase appetite for those who just can't seem to eat enough.
First, there's a little non-supplemental trick that is kind of stupid but would benefit some people. For those who really want to suppress their appetite and have no other way to do it, I had this old trick where I would put my weightlifting belt around my stomach and then chug 2 liters of diet soda. You feel like crap and you will not eat for half a day.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, it works awesomely. Probably not the best idea for gastric reflux, but
what does the weight belt do to it?
It just prevents your stomach from expanding too much.
Okay.
You get a lot of pressure in your stomach, so that's why it's not going to be good for gastric reflux.
Right.
But for supplements, I haven't seen much that increases appetite. I guess mainly because it's not a really good research topic. We don't have an epidemic of people under eating and thus need to find interventions to increase food intake.
Right.
I remember one study, I'm not sure how strong it is, to be honest, that suggested Panax ginseng might, I guess, regulate appetite. So bring it down a bit if you're overeating, bring it up a bit if you're undereating. I only mention this because it's the only study that looked at both sides of the coin. So bring up your appetite if you're undereating. It may just be by reducing stress. Panax ginseng is a known adaptogen. So if stress reduction works, then any adaptogen compound might help increase appetite.
Mm-hmm.
For those who want to decrease in appetite, same thing. If you're eating a lot because, like emotional eating, if you're eating a lot because you're stressed and all that,
right,
reduce the stress, eating will be reduced. Even looking at your own habits of what you eat, why you eat, when you eat, paying more attention to how you eat could potentially reduce food intake and emotional eating. For the actual, I'm assuming biological hunger, because a lot of overeating is just, I guess, emotional in a sense and more
right.
related to habits than biology. But for biological intake, there's one supplement called alpha lipoic acid. It's weird because there's no studies in humans on this right now, but it very reliably reduces food intake in rats for 2 weeks or so and then stops working. It's so potent that a lot of studies have to use control, alpha lipoic acid fed, and then a pair fed group with or without alpha lipoic acid, where if you give them ALA, they're going to have a reduction in food intake, but that could screw with the results of the study. So you have to have another group that's fed only as much as that ALA group is to see if it's due to caloric restriction or the supplement intervention. Like when a compound actually has to have pair-fed groups because it suppresses appetite and food intake, that's pretty cool. And there's seemingly no evidence in humans, but there's no reason it wouldn't work in humans. It only seems to work for 2 weeks or so, but it's very reliable in rats. So if you have any ALA laying around, or if you can just grab some from a friend for a short bit, I'd probably recommend that actually.
Okay, awesome.
Or just more fiber. Yeah, like you're not going to eat anything if you just ate 5 heads of broccoli.
Right. So what do you make? So for someone who's trying to, let's just say it's someone who's just quote unquote hard gainer, trying to gain weight, trying to gain some muscle, and they're eating a lot of food, but they need to eat more. Is it just a case of dietary changes where eating more calorie dense foods, or is there something if they are eating plenty of calorie dense foods, expanding upon it besides just the supplementation like ALA?
Marijuana would help, but I can't recommend that too much. A little trick I did learn, however, again, it's not supplementation, but this is because supplementation is not really looked at much for increasing food intake. Ginger molasses cookies. Just a really sweet cookie. Have that on the side of the table when you're eating. You eat your meal, you're full, you can't eat another bite. Nibble on that ginger molasses cookie, you'll have a little bit of appetite restored. Then you can eat more of your actual food. Go back to the cookie, nibble on that a little bit. The sweetness will stimulate appetite a little bit. And you just keep on doing this, forcing food down, and the cookies make it easier, and they're food themselves too.
Huh.
Like in the sensation of sweet, like ginger molasses cookies are just tasty and they work really well for it, but the sensation of sweet can increase appetite a little bit.
Huh. Did not know that. Love it. Awesome. All right. Let's go to post-training nutrition supplementation. What do you suggest there?
I cannot actually recommend too much stuff that just doesn't beat sandwiches.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I would wholeheartedly recommend carbohydrates post-workout.
Mm-hmm.
Carbohydrates, proteins, and if you have any supplements that you want absorbed at this time, go for it, because most likely you're just going to eat a lot and relax a bit. That's great for absorption, just not running around in circles. Any supplement like creatine or whatever that you need to take at some point in the day, might as well take it there. And then there's limited evidence that glucose disposal agents or things that help with putting glucose into a cell, be it muscle or fat cell, it's really hard to differentiate the two.
Okay.
But for people who don't handle carbs well, those supplements can help people.
Okay.
I can't think of any recommendation. Berberine. Berberine would be an awesome one for that.
What is berberine?
It's one of my babies. One of my favorite supplements as of late. Like I would rank it just as potent or more potent than curcumin and resveratrol. Like it's in that level. It's just an alkaloid that's seen as anti-diabetic. It increases glucose uptake into both myocytes and fat cells, so indiscriminately, but it also kind of suppresses proliferation of fat cells, so it's not like you're going to get obese from this. Have you heard of AMPK activators before?
No.
AMPK is just a nutrient signaling protein. When it's active, well, it's only active when a cell is low in energy, and it just brings in glucose and fatty acids to make more energy. It's a way a cell can regulate its own energy status. And berberine activates this by interfering with the mitochondria, so that pulls in both fatty acids and glucose.
Okay.
But berberine is very effective at this, seems quite safe as well. There's actually a fair bit of human evidence on it. And one thing that I find interesting, though, in traditional Chinese medicine, there's like 5, 6 different herbs that were all seen as anti-diabetic. Berberine has been isolated from each one. That's just pure chance, or it could be the berberine acting.
Awesome. All right, so I want to finish up addressing 2 of your articles or posts, one from Silver Hydra and the other from Examine. First, let's kind of, because you were just bringing it up, the Chinese herbs. It was the article Chinese herbs, not shit, possibly even better than Western supplementation. Go off on that a little bit.
Well, it's just up until about, I'd say, somewhere in the late 1990s. Prior to that, just herbs were herbs. You ate them, they did something. How are they doing this? We don't know. Like we didn't have good analytical techniques to see what was in the herb. So, and because for pharmacy, it's great to know the molecule you're working with because you can try to predict side effects. Since we didn't know what was working in herbs, it was sort of negligent to recommend those herbs because you could not predict side effects, you could not assure their safety. Mm-hmm. And then if you spoke with traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, they use a different nomenclature. Saying something has a cooling or warming effect, the yin, yang, the qi, these aren't scientifically valid terms. It kind of makes no sense to a pharmacist. And so they fell out of favor. And then there's also a lot of case reports of people refusing pharmaceuticals, running to herbs and kind of killing themselves off them because they just took the wrong stuff or too much. We don't know what's happening.
Right.
So traditionally, it's always been prudent to advise against herbs, especially if there's better pharmaceuticals at hand. And that still stands right now. If there's a better pharmaceutical option, you use it. Medicine takes precedence over alternative medicine. But now that we have analytical techniques and we can see what's going on in these herbs, we're isolating a lot of powerful compounds from these herbs. Ephedra ephedrine was isolated from these herbs before. Berberine, as I was just mentioned, like one of my new babies, was isolated from a bunch of these herbs. There's a lot of compounds which seem potent but don't have a lot of human evidence at this moment in time. But there does seem to be some logic behind these herbs. It's still in the stages of being elucidated more and finding what is good, what's bad. But the fact that out of 20,000, maybe up to 1 million different plants in the general Greater China area, they isolated that to 50 herbs that had benefits, and they did this over the course of 2,000 or 3,000 years. So there's probably a lot of fatalities, and whoops, that didn't work. Cross that off. Use the next herb. There is some logical process guiding their recommendations, and I still remember one study. I don't know what happened with it, but there's a decoction called Dengui Buxui Teng. It's astragalus and angelicae. They're 2 herbs. And it was always recommended that you'd have them in a certain ratio. I believe it was 5-1, don't quote me on that. And the study basically said, let's test ratios. They had 1-1, 2-1, 4-1, 5-1, up to 10-1. The traditionally recommended ratio was right at the top of the bell curve for isolating bioactives. Right at the top. If you went up a little bit or down a little bit, you'd have less. Mm-hmm. You don't get that by pure chance. Weird little things like this have happened a lot. I consider it negligent to outright disregard all Chinese herbs because they're Chinese herbs. I wouldn't recommend Chinese medicine over mainstream medicine right now, but the potential that is in Chinese medicine at this moment in time and the molecules being isolated from the herbs is just too astounding to ignore it any longer. But for the most part, it's just like a research, it's like party discussions.
Okay.
Like aside from berberine and maybe a few other things, a lot of these things aren't too practical.
Right. Okay. Well, let's finish up with the topic of fish oils. It's on examining the benefits or lack thereof of heart health with fish oils. What is your take on that after looking through the study?
There is benefit to heart health with fish oils. It's just the magnitude of benefit has been getting whittled down a lot. Like the first few studies on fish oils said that there's like a 50% reduced chance of death, and that's astounding.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of went down to 40, then 30, then whatever. And the last meta-analyses that concluded people were saying it concluded no benefit. The meta-analyses did include that the benefit was like 2.5% or something. So a small magnitude of effect. Basically what's happening is fish oil is having a high protective effect in very high risk populations that seem to respond well to fish oil. So if you cherry pick the data just for that population, amazing effects. If you look at either the entire group of people deemed at high risk or just everyone in general, the overall average effect benefits are kind of small because some people don't need fish oil, or some people just, it's doing 2% reduction of health.
Right.
I mean, that was bad, poor choice. 2% benefit to health by reducing disease. Like, it's still good. It's not, I wouldn't recommend it good enough to run out and buy it because, yay, I like my heart. But it would be false to say that fish oil is useless. It's just a thing, I guess.
All right. Awesome. Well, this interview, there's been a lot, and I'm going to have to watch through it a couple times and take notes all throughout the thing because it's chock full of a lot of stuff. Finish up. Do you have what's going on in 2013 for Examine for you and for Silver Hydra?
Silver Hydra, the blog will still just be a little deposit for my thoughts that are not befitting of Examine. I expect some weird articles to be posted at completely random times because I'm horrible at sticking to a schedule with that site. Examine's just going to continue to grow. I've just been adding a lot of weird herbs, like user request of obscure stuff lately, but I'm definitely trying to get more of the actual good stuff on Examine. Like in a few days, I'll be updating both the spirulina and berberine pages, and both those compounds are actually legitimately awesome. So I'm going to be updating a lot on Examine, particularly the good pages. And just for 2003, I just hope to get a lot more studies on Examine.
2003?
Sorry?
2003?
Well, let's just throw a 1 in there somewhere. It's kind of a 0. Yeah, I'm just expecting Examine to just grow, linear or exponential, I don't know. I'm just going to get as much of the correct information as possible. And let's see how high I can push that citation count, given caffeine is still readily available to me.
Right. All right. Well, Kurtis, I thank you once again for coming on the show. Everyone, this is Kurtis Frank. I'll put the links down below to go to his websites, exam.com and also silverhydra.com. This is Kyle with theartofphysicalfitness.com. Again, thanks, Kurtis, for coming on. And until next time, everybody, we will talk to you later. Bye.